Okay, I want to start the numerical analysis section of the course. We lost a few lecture periods there due to setting up after spring break due to the changes. What I'm going to do is in the remaining sessions is go through an introduction to Octave MATLAB. This is actually from a course that was offered at MIT several years ago, and then they've made their slides available online. So I'm going to go through that, and then actually you'll have the same assignments they have. Their course was on MATLAB. Again, we'll use Octave. Everything is essentially the same. Everything you can do in MATLAB, you can do in Octave. Octave is just a free version that runs on all operating systems, but it's essentially a compatible version of MATLAB. I will say this is a valuable skill to have. Not only an introduction to MATLAB, but being proficient in MATLAB is a desirable skill when you're actually seeking employment. You can get actually full-time jobs if you're just proficient in programming in MATLAB or Octave. So this has the course is broken down into 5 lectures. I plan to only do the first 4. We may not get through the first 4. This first lecture is going to be broken down into a couple of different sessions. I think there's 5 different sessions today. The first session's a little long, with close to 60 some slides. There are problem sets associated with every day's lectures. 7 to 8 problems, I think, typically. So it does say here it takes about 3 hours to do the problem sets. So cut and paste your code into a Word document and then translate that to PDF, and then upload the PDF as part of your homework. Again, office hours by appointment. We can do Zoom office hours, or you can contact me by email. So let's go through today. Want to go through just a brief introduction. We'll talk about scripts and variables, manipulating variables and matrices, and then basic plotting. And so I'll break the lecture up into these five different sections and corresponding videos. The first one on getting started is pretty short. Again, we're not going to use MATLAB. We're going to use actually Octave. I think everyone should have that installed on their computer. We've been using that throughout the course. Here they show a MATLAB GUI interface. Here's the corresponding MATLAB interface with this is the file explorer here. There's a variable explorer, and then previous commands, and then this is the command window. And then Octave actually supports different tabs here for the command window, the editor, and then also the online documentation. So there's a lot of good information in the command window. So there are a few differences between the interface in MATLAB and the Octave interface, but not much. I tell you here in MATLAB, to make, and these tips actually translate into Octave. Use folders or directories to keep your programs organized. I would recommend creating a separate directory for each of your homework assignments and for each of these lecture days. They recommend not using spaces in folder names. That confuses some computer programs. I recommend that as good practice in general. A lot of computer programs can be confused by spaces and folder names. Again, in Octave, you can kind of use this little file explorer here to browse to a particular directory. There's a pull down list here. Usually when this starts, at the top of the list is the last directory you were in, so you can click there to go right to that directory, and then you'll see the folders here to the left, and then you can double click on a folder icon to move into that directory. And under the little gear icon here, you can make additional directories or new files there. There is also under the edit menu, you can get to a preferences window where you can actually set different preferences on, the command window, and then the editor, the font size, and things like that. But I think the defaults are fine. So going back to the slides here, again, they show modifying the MATLAB GUI preferences. You can use MATLAB as a calculator, as a very powerful calculator, again, for some basic arithmetic, exp of 2 or cosine of pi over 2. You can use it as a very powerful calculator. I don't recommend, it's okay for some quick and dirty calculations like this. Anything more than a few lines, I recommend actually using it as like a program language and creating a script, and we'll cover that in the next section today. It's actually an interpreted language. That means it's not compiled. It says here it's like Java, but Java is actually a compiled language. Python is another popular interpreted language where the program is actually executed line by line. Another basic thing we went used to here is help, and the online documentation is probably the most useful thing, the useful command that's available, for all the online commands. Like help on the sine function tells you here that the argument has to be in radians, for example. So don't expect sine of 45 degrees to work. I will say there is a, if you look down here, it says C sine D. That looks promising. Sine D, compute the sine for an angle in degrees. So if we actually wanted the sine of 45 degrees, you should use sine D instead of sine. Of course, the equivalent would be the sine of pi over 4 should give us the same answer of 0.7071. So we can get help on individual functions here. More powerful than the built-in help is just the help. If I use the doc function, it'll take me to the documentation, and I can see here the documentation, and I've got it's like a hypertext or a web-based help text with links, and so I can just click on sine D to get directly to that. And then probably the most powerful thing is the complete documentation for Octave is available, with all the different chapters that are available, and lots of good information here. So if you have any questions here, you can look at the online documentation if you don't get enough information about from looking at the help. And then again, there is search available, so sine D, and then it pulls up all the different areas in the document where there's a reference to sine D. So the trigonometry one looks promising, so I can look here under the trigonometry, and here's sine, and then also I'll find sine D in this section as well. Okay, so that concludes this first short video. In the next section, we'll look at actually using variables.